wake up. No more distractions, no more co-host review shows. Just narrating slasher books for slashaholics. I'm done with those damn review shows, done with being someone's co-host. I'm just narrating slasher books for the slashaholics. And when Jason walks in with his machete, or when you cross paths with Myers, or you dream of Freddy, whatever the tale, I'm gonna read it for you, cause I'm the 80s fucking slasher librarian Josh LaRue. Whatever I read, whatever you hear, there's one thing I'll promise year after year: you're gonna get the best of my best, this I promise you. Cause I'm back in that fucking bloody slasher groove. Because the librarian is back in the slasher groove. The librarian is back in that slasher groove. That's a promise from Josh LaRue. Slasher books both old and new, written by me and written by you. Yup, now I'm back, I'm back. No more distractions, no more co-host reviews. The librarian is back in that slasher groove. Just narrating slasher books for slashaholics. The librarian is back. I even wrote my own take on Jason and Freddy. Started with quarantine and then I was ready, so I sent Krueger to space in celestial slumber. Then Jason went primal and the rafters had his number. My audiobooks have crossed 75. Now let's hit 100 and have a fucking good time. The librarian is back in the slasher groove. The librarian is back in that slasher groove. Just narrating slasher books for slashaholics. The librarian is back.
Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. The fan novelization by Jeremy Terry. Prologue. Two lovers. The full moon set high in the sky over Crystal Lake, New Jersey, its skull face grinning down like a demented silver jack-o'-lantern. Night birds sang their melancholy songs to the night from their perches in the trees over a cluster of abandoned cabins. They didn't know it, and wouldn't care if they did, but terrible things had been done near that place. They were impassive as long as they could keep singing in the dark. A new light cut across the moon's reflection, cast from the bow lights of a small cabin cruiser that idled just offshore. Below the vessel, something slept the sleep of the dead. Snatches of whispered conversation and a teenage girl's giggles floated over the placid water. Then another voice spoke. "It's like this. We live in claustrophobia, a land of steel and concrete, trapped by dark waters. There is no escape, nor do we want it. We've come to thrive on it and each other. You can't get the adrenaline pumping without the terror, good people. I love this town. You've been listening to WGAZ, the electricity of Manhattan. This request has gone all the way out to Crystal Lake and the senior class of Lakeview High." "Hey," said the girl as she and her boyfriend slow danced through the boat's stateroom. "That's us." Her name was Susie. She was 18 years old with orange hair and a cloud of freckles on the bridge of her nose and cheeks. Her boyfriend was Jim. He was tall, thin, with black hair and came from a rich family. They stopped swirling and twirling and glanced over at the small AM/FM radio sitting in the windowsill over the bed. "They'll be graduating on the 13th of this month, and we wish them the best of luck and success when they visit our seductive city. Our lore is a great one, young friends, but beware. The City of Lights cast many shadows indeed." "Awesome," Susie said. "Is that how you feel right now?" Jim asked, kissing her shoulder. "Awesome?" "Ask me again in 5 minutes," she replied with a coquettish smile. She planted a soft kiss of her own on his lips. "I'm talking about graduation," he said. "About being able to do whatever we want to do from now on." She ran her hands across his bare skin beneath his shirt and felt goose flesh rise. "It feels excellent." "Yeah, it does," he said, backing away. "I need to go drop anchor before this goes any farther." "Hurry back," she said, walking towards the bed and throwing back the sheets. The sight of her climbing in and tossing her underwear aside set his insides ablaze. He turned and left the cabin. Spring had yet to fully fight off winter's chill, and he shivered in the cool night air. The sound of the water lapping against the boat's hull was soothing, and he smiled. Some people would call him a spoiled little rich kid, with the boat and his car packed back at the marina, and he could see their point. Still, he could take their ire if it meant he could have moments like this. He moved forward along the boat to the bow and knelt beside the anchor hoist. He put his hand on the release and then paused, looking out across the lake to the shore where a cluster of run-down cabins and an old lifeguard's tower sat. Creeping vines grew up the cabin's walls, climbed the tower's rotten legs. It hung from the caves like dangling, grasping fingers. "Is that where we are?" he thought with a shudder. Old stories filled his mind, and he looked back to his task. He released the latch and watched as the thick chain unspooled, dropping the ship's anchor down into the dark depths. It hit bottom, slid along the muddy lake bed, and finally caught on an electrical cable as thick as a man's leg. The anchor tugged the cable out of place and on top of a strange shape that lay amidst the broken remnants of a shattered dock. Its head bobbed and its arms swayed on the gentle current. Unaware that he and Susie were no longer alone, Jim walked back along the boat and down into the cabin where Susie waited for him with a smile on her lips. He kissed her, but his fervor from minutes before was gone. "What's wrong?" she asked. He sat on the bed beside her, trying to find his grin, but not quite able to. "It's nothing." Susie sat up, frowning. "Come on, Jimmy, I know that something is bothering you." He sighed, glancing out the small window that faced the shore. "It's just that we're right around that old summer camp where all those murders took place." The boat creaked as if someone was treading on its decks with steps. Susie grabbed the bedsheets and pulled them up to her neck as if they were armor that could protect her from lurking intruders. "What murders?" Jim met her gaze, remembering that Susie had only moved to Crystal Lake a few years before. The stories of Camp Blood were old, most occurring before the two of them were out of diapers. He wasn't surprised that she wasn't familiar with them. "Never mind," he said, putting a hand on her shoulder. "Trust me, you don't want to know about it." "Bullcrap!" she snapped. "You can't drop some vague shit on a person like that and then leave them in the dark. Tell me." "There's nothing to worry about, Susie," he said. "The guy's dead now, somewhere at the bottom of this lake, if you believe the stories. Let's drop it, okay?" He tried to kiss her, and she leaned away, her expression serious. "What stories?" Jim studied her stern face for a second and then began to speak. "There was this boy named Jason Voorhees. He was 8 years old when he drowned. Apparently the counselors that were supposed to be watching over the swimming area had wandered off to explore each other instead. One camper heard Jason's pleas for help, but they were even smaller than him and couldn't swim. The last thing they saw before they ran to find an adult was Jason's hand slipping beneath the dark waters of the lake." "How awful!" Susie gasped, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. "They never found Jason's body," Jim continued, warming to his subject. Susie thought he was starting to sound like one of the camp counselors he was talking about, sitting around a campfire telling ghost stories. A bunch of years went by and people began to forget. That's when the murders started. "Was it Jason?" Susie asked. "Did he come back for his revenge?" Jim paused for effect and then shook his head. "That's what some people thought, but they were wrong. Jason's mother, Pamela Voorhees, blamed the counselors for her son's death. She killed the two most responsible, the two lovers who should have been watching Jason in the water, the year following her son's death. The camp was closed for a time until a man named Steve Christie decided to reopen it. This sent Pamela over the edge, and she returned to the camp and tried to kill all the counselors and Christie himself. Jim stopped talking, letting the silence spin out around them. Finally, he ran a finger across his throat. Mrs. Voorhees got her head chopped off by one of them instead. So, the murders stopped? Susie asked. Jim shook his head. No, they didn't. Legend has it that Jason was there that night and that he saw his mother get decapitated. They say he vowed to avenge his mother's death by killing every teenager in the area. And every now and again, the murders will start up anew. The boat rocked on a gentle swell, and a whippoorwill sang its forlorn song, sending a chill down both of their spines. Jim was a better storyteller than he thought he was because he'd given himself the heebie-jeebies. He put his arm around Susie and nuzzled her neck. Forget about it, babe. They're just stories. Susie remained tense. We're the last graduating class, right? Jim kissed her neck, his fright already forgotten. Right? I mean, Lakeview High just closed its doors for good, right? She asked. Right, Jim said, reaching for her chest. So there's no reason for Jason to come back because there won't be any of us around, right? Jim stopped and stared at her. Right, except that Jason Voorhees died a long time ago, so none of it matters anyway. There is no such thing as zombie kids who murder their camp counselors. Susie blushed and turned away from him. I know that. It was just a scary story, that's all. I mean, look at us all alone out here on this lake. No other people around for miles. You know this is how a lot of scary movies start. The next thing you know, we'll look out the window and see some squishy monster reaching out to grab us and drag us back to the bottom of the lake with it. At this new horrifying idea, both teens looked up at the window, holding their breath. Nothing moved. Well, shit, Jim laughed, pulling her down beside him on the bed and kissing her in earnest. The idea of us alone out here gets me excited. We can be as loud as we want and don't have to worry about anyone hearing us. Susie giggled in spite of herself and kissed him back as she rolled on top of him. You perv, do you ever think of anything else? That's not true, Jim said, winking at her. I think about a lot of things. So let's stop talking about them and start doing them. Jim sealed her mouth with a kiss, taking away the last of her resistance. They reveled in each other as the night slowly ticked. Outside, the wind picked up, pushing against the tethered craft. The boat strained against the anchor holding it in place. The anchor's blade rubbed against the electrical cable, splitting the rubber cover and biting into the wire beneath. Blue-white sparks lit up Crystal Lake, killing the fish in the immediate area and shocking life back into a dormant shape. On shore, the streetlights that lit the vacant campgrounds flickered and then died. Awareness came back, and with it the rage. Synapses fired, carrying terrible memories through his mind. He saw Mother. She was kind and loving. She didn't care if he was ugly or different. She didn't care that he chose not to speak. He saw his father, the man who loved his wife so much that he'd risk his very soul in a bargain with things beyond the veil so that she could give birth to him. His father, who had balked when he'd realized that the child created by the pact with the Deadites was more monster than man. More images flashed by. He playing in the lake, drowning, coming to an unknown time later to find that his body was decayed and bloated from his time beneath the water, and yet he still lived. He found his way to an old shack and made it his home while his body healed itself. The voices of the Deadites told him he would never die. They told him he would go on, and he believed them. He saw the pretty woman with the short blonde hair killing Mother, felt the pain of her loss as keenly as the moment she'd first been taken from him. He thought himself lost and alone, and he hadn't known what to do. Then the Deadites' voices faded away, and Mother's voice took their place. She knew exactly what he should do. He was a good boy, and he did what he was told. A stream of screaming, bloody faces passed through his mind's eye, victims of his wrath. He'd stabbed them, sliced them, chopped and sawed them. He saw the faces, all of them, a face of a blond boy wearing glasses, heard him screaming, "Die, die, die," as the boy chopped his body with his own machete. They'd buried him then, and there had been peace for a time. Then the same blond boy, grown older, had dug him up and stabbed his body through the heart with an iron rod during a thunderstorm. Lightning crashed and he was brought back. More teenagers had paid the price until the blond boy had managed to strap him below the lake's surface. Another blond person, this one a girl, had awakened him next. She'd done so with her mind, and despite all the hurt that had come before, she'd hurt him worse than any other. In fact, she'd almost finished him for real. She'd used her strange gift to summon a spirit who'd once again lashed him to the bottom of the lake and put out his lights. Now, thanks to the electrical cable and the boat overhead, he was back, and he was so very angry. Jason opened his one good eye and glared up along the anchor chain to the boat above him. He heard muffled voices, gasping in passion, and clenched his bony fists. "Yes, Jason," said Mother. "They will never leave you alone, and they will never stop doing the bad thing. Not unless you make them, my special boy." Jason would stop them. Oh, yes, he would. He reached down and shoved the wood piled on top of him away. Then he took hold of the anchor chain and began to climb. The boat swayed almost imperceptibly, and a loose board creaked up on deck as if someone had stepped on it. Susie disentangled herself from Jim and sat up, clutching the covers to her naked breast. "Did you hear that?" Jim growled, trying to pull her back down on the bed. "Hear what?" Susie leaned away from him, clearly not in the mood anymore. "That creak, it sounded like someone walking on the deck." Jim rubbed a hand over his eyes in frustration. "Come on, Susie, there's no one out there." He reached for her one more time and stopped at the look on her face. Sighing, he sat up and pulled his boxer shorts on. "Okay, I'll go check it out. I'll be right back." "That's what people say in scary movies," she said. "They say they'll be right back, but they never are because they get killed by the psycho murderer guy." Jim stopped in the cabin doorway and winked at her over his shoulder. "I'll be right back." Susie dropped the sheet and shot him a bird, but Jim didn't see it. He was already gone. "You stupid idiot," she grumbled as she grabbed his button-up shirt and put it on, buttoning it closed with shaking fingers. "Don't you know you aren't supposed to tempt fate?" She sat on the edge of the mattress, trying to let the gentle rocking of the boat calm her frazzled nerves. She took a deep breath, attempting to slow her pounding heart so that she could hear the presence of a stranger among them. A minute passed, and then two, and Jim wasn't back. She stood and crept to the door. "Jimmy? Jim?" He didn't answer. "Stop screwing around, Jim. I mean it. I swear I'm cutting you off if you try to scare—" A shadow moved into the doorway, a long knife held above its head, an old hockey mask on its face. Susie didn't have time to scream before it brought the shining blade down. It struck her chest. Strange, there was no pain. She glanced down as the masked man pulled the knife back, and she saw that the blade was fake, the tip made to slide into the base of the knife and give the illusion that it had penetrated flesh. Her would-be killer held his hand up and thrust the false blade against his palm to demonstrate, and then pulled the mask off his face. "Got you good, Susie," Jim said, laughing as he tossed the fake knife and mask away into the dark. Susie was not amused. She crossed her arms over the place where the knife had touched her and stomped back to the bed. Jim followed after, his laughter dying on his lips. "Come on, babe," he said. "It was just a joke, you know, a little Camp Blood levity to clear the air after the story. Didn't you hear what I was saying before you jumped out at me? I hope you like your hand because you are cut off." "Seriously?" he asked. Her dagger-like stare was answer enough. "You planned this, didn't you?" she asked. "You bought that knife and that stupid mask and brought it along just to scare the ever-loving shit out of me." His face flushed, and he looked down at his bare feet in shame. "Yeah, I did. I thought it would be funny, you know. I'm an idiot." Susie raised one eyebrow. "And?" "All right," he said, sensing her anger fading away. "I'm an idiot and a major ass, and I'm very sorry." "And you'll never do something like that again?" she prompted. "And I'll never do anything like that again," he repeated, raising his hand and drawing a cross over his heart for emphasis. "Will you forgive me?" "No," she said with a hint of a smile on her pretty face. Jim saw this and sighed with relief. Maybe the night wasn't ruined after all. He scooted closer to her and put his arm around her waist. She leaned into his touch and pressed her lips to his. Nope, he thought as they lay back onto the mattress. Not ruined at all. He walked the deck beneath the silver dollar moon with its skull face, a monster from the deep reborn to plague the world once again. He stepped into the wheelhouse and paused in front of the open bathroom door to stare at his reflection in the small mirror over the sink. He was a travesty, a soggy creature that should have ceased moving years ago, and yet he still walked. He saw the old wound in his forehead from an axe, saw his rotten teeth through his cheek. One eye was gone, eaten by fish or some other animal long ago. He looked down at his hands and saw the bones poking through his decayed flesh. "It's okay," said the voices of the things inside him, the things from the cursed book his father used to give him life. "Remember, you are eternal. You will heal. You will go on so that you can continue the work you were born to do." "That's right," Mother said. "You aren't done yet. Can't you hear them in there? Running like pigs in their own filth? Kill them, Jason. Kill them and all their friends. Listen to your mommy." "Listen to your mommy, boy," said the voices. Jason would. He turned from the mirror and his gaze fell on something long and black hanging in a rack on the wall. He grabbed it, turned it this way and that in the dim light from the boat's instrument panel. The spear gun brought back another memory. The girl was dressed in a sweater and capri slacks, her hair dark as night. He'd found her kneeling on the end of a dock trying to fish a man's wallet out of the lake. The wallet had belonged to the fat man he'd gotten his first hockey mask from. He'd gotten something else from the fat man as well. He'd stopped at the beginning of the dock and aimed it at the woman. She'd thought him the fat man at first, thought he was joking with her. "Shelley?" she'd asked. He'd pulled the spear gun's trigger, and a spear had flown true, striking the woman in her eye and sending her toppling backwards into Crystal Lake, where she died in a spreading pool of watery blood. He gripped the spear gun tighter and walked down 2 steps into the boat's combined dining area and galley. The door to the bedroom was on the far side. It was open, and he could see 2 writhing shapes beneath the bed sheets. Their grunts and moans of pleasure stoked the fiery rage inside him. He stalked forward and stopped when something caught his eye. He knelt, picked it up, and held it reverently in his hands. It was an old hockey mask. The white plastic was yellowed with age, and there was a red, upside-down triangle on the forehead and red diagonal lines below the eye holes. Were it not for the missing axe mark on the top, it might have been his old mask. He slipped it on and adjusted the straps, feeling complete again. He turned back to the moaning duo, ready to bring their joy to a screaming and bloody end. Jim was in heaven, and it was getting better by the second. He hoped that it was just as good for Susie, and that she was getting close because he was nearing the point of no return, and he was about to get his whether she got hers or not. He called her name and felt her body go rigid beneath him. He smiled, proud of his prowess as a lover. "Jason!" Susie hissed. Jim frowned, unsure what she'd said. Had she said another man's name while making love to him? "Jason!" she screamed, shoving Jim off. Jim rolled over and sat bewildered beside her against the headboard. He looked where she was staring and saw a huge man dressed in a muddy black work shirt, pants, and torn black gloves. Jim's hockey mask covered the man's face. "Dude, what the fuck?" he said. "What are you doing on my boat?" The big man didn't answer. He just stared from the masked black eye holes, as still as a corpse in its grave. Then the man lifted the spear gun in his right hand and took aim. "Hey!" The twang of the spear gun's big rubber bands filled the cabin, and then Jim heard a thunk as the spear's three-pointed tip embedded itself in the wood an inch from his head. "Oh fuck, this is real," Jim thought. "This maniac is trying to kill us. There's no way out. He's got us trapped like rats." Except there was a way out. Susie stood and slammed her hands into the small window over the bed and began to crawl through. Jim watched her and then turned back to the man stalking towards him. There was no time. Susie might get free. Maybe. It would depend on how long the killer took with Jim. A strange sense of unreality washed over Jim, and he sat placidly back against the headboard. It was as if he were watching the whole scene played out on a movie theater screen. It was like it was happening to somebody else. At least that was how it felt until the man thrust the empty spear gun forward, stabbing 5 inches of its tubular barrel into Jim's stomach. Pain blossomed in his stomach, so much pain. Jim hadn't known a person could feel pain like this. Then the man picked him up with the spear gun, its tip sliding further and further into his body. Jim felt something tearing, and then his throat and mouth were full of blood. He coughed red droplets onto the upturned mask, and the mask stared blankly back. Jim tried to curse his murderer and couldn't draw the breath to speak. The man reached up with his slimy left hand to grab Jim's shoulder, and Jim smelled the fetid, watery stench of the man. He registered the pale gray skin of his neck, and realization struck home. His killer was a dead man, and he knew his name, had spoken it aloud just minutes before. "Jason!" Jim spat, reaching out to swipe at the slasher's face and missing. His hand hit a porthole to his right and left a bright red streak. Jason yanked down on Jim's shoulder, impaling the teenager further on the spear gun. Jim felt one of his lungs and his heart rupture. Blood left him in a rush, rained down over Jason's hand and booted feet. His last thought was of Susie. He hoped she'd had enough time to hide or jump from the vessel. He prayed she would be okay. Light faded from the world, and Jim closed his eyes. Jason lowered the boy to the bed and then pried the spear from the wall. There had been no splash. The girl was still on board. He turned and walked through the boat and up onto the deck, feeling for her. He knew she was close. The voices told him so. He looked towards the bow, considered it, and then turned around. He walked along the port side of the boat, listening to the voices, clamoring that he was almost upon her. He came to a hatch on the deck just behind the wheelhouse and knew it was right. He bent over and flung the hatch open. The girl was there. She lay on her back in a space meant to hold fishing gear. There was barely space for her to fit, and she had wedged herself inside. Now she was trapped, and all she could do was stare up into Jason's one glinting eye as he took the spear in both hands and ever so slowly lowered the killing point towards her. "Oh no!" she screamed. "Please!" The tip was a foot away from her chest, 6 inches. He stopped, looking into her soul. He held the tip still while she gasped and sobbed. She reached up and tried to break the spear, to yank it from his hands, and found she couldn't. Still, Jason waited. Then he pushed down against her grabbing desperate hands, slowly, ever so slowly. The tip found the cleft between her breast and passed through. The girl's screams turned to desperate squeals as she beat at his hands. He pushed the spear all the way through her, yanked it free, and pushed it in again, and again, and again. Finally, her squirming and cries came to an end, and Jason slammed the hatch shut on her corpse. They were the first. The voices and Mother told him there were more visitors close by. They told him what to do, and he obeyed. After all, he was a good boy. He walked from the stern to the bow and pulled the lever to raise the anchor. Then he walked into the wheelhouse and turned on the boat's big diesel engines. He took the wheel, pushed a lever forward, and heard the engines rev as the boat's prop began to spin. "Good boy," Mother said. "Just keep following our directions. We'll take you to their friends. Mother is so proud of you." That was all that Jason needed to hear. Somewhere up ahead were more teenagers and adults who needed to pay. They were like all the others that had come before, and they would meet the same fate. Jason turned the wheel, piloting the boat towards the east end of Crystal Lake, where a river would lead him to the deep blue sea. Okay, Slashaholics, this has been the prologue of Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, the fan novelization by Jeremy Terry. This is really exciting because this is the last of the original Jason movies to get a novelization. It's the only one that's been missing. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for tackling this one. I'm sure somebody, Jeremy or Landon or somebody in the future, might do one for the remake. I'm not sure. But this makes everything whole. If you're listening to this the day it was uploaded, or, the week or so it was uploaded, this is a preview of this book. I got to finish a couple other books first, and then I'll return to this one. But I just wanted to get the prologue out there and let everybody know that this one's coming, and to kind of preview what Jeremy's doing with the story, which I greatly appreciate what he's doing. He's going the full Deadite route, the Jason Goes to Hell stuff. Love that. I love the fact that he didn't have the mask have that axe mark in it like in the movie. Because, that's kind of hokey. How would he know, that guy know to put an axe mark in it? I'm sure there were witness statements and stuff, but usually the police don't release that stuff. Kind of like in Friday the 13th 5, the movie. When there's like a newspaper clipping with a picture of Jason from one of the movies. It's like, who the hell took that picture? But yeah, this was a great prologue. The whole scene with Jim and Susie played out great. It was fun. The kills were very well written. Going into the stuff with Jason's father and mother, using the Necronomicon. And finding out the way Jason finds people and is able to do things that he shouldn't be able to do is because he's getting direction from these deadite voices and his mother's voice in his head. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to tackle the rest of this book. The prologue was a lot of fun. And I hope all of you enjoyed it too. If you did, please let us know in the comment section below. I love to hear from you and hear what you think of these books, and so do the authors. I'm sure Jeremy would love to hear your feedback. And if you're excited about what's to come with this book going forward. Stay tuned. I'll be dropping the rest of Freddy's Dead very soon. More of The Curse of the Jersey Devil, Act 2, as well as a new book by James Acosta titled Nightmares. Lots of cool stuff this spooky season. If you want to support the channel, the best thing you can do is subscribe, click the like button, drop a comment, spread the word, let people know about the channel, get the word out there. And if you want to go, the extra mile, you can do a super thanks comment tip on any video here on the channel, or you can do one-time tips through PayPal, Cash App. You can become a Patreon member or a channel member, both of which get early ebook chapters of books like Friday the 13th, Part 8, Freddy's Dead, stuff like that. You'll get access to read the chapters before they're ever on the channel as a narration. But that's for patrons and channel members. You can also order a cameo video or buy one of my books on Amazon. All the information to do so, any of these things, is in the comments, the pinned comment, and the description below. You can also find more books by Jeremy Terry on Amazon, such as his Halloween Massacre book, which pitted Michael Myers against Leatherface. That information is in the pinned comment and description below as well. Until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you soon.
Time to wake up, the librarian is back. The librarian is back. The librarian is back in the slasher groove. It's time to wake up, it's time to wake up. No more distractions, no more co-host review shows. Just narrating slasher books for slashaholics. I'm done with those damn review shows. Done with being someone's co-host. I'm just narrating slasher books for the slashaholics. I'm done with those damn review shows. Done with being someone's co-host. I'm just narrating slasher books for the slashaholics. And when Jason walks in with his machete, or when you cross paths with Myers, or you dream of Freddy, whatever the tale, I'm gonna read it for you. Cause I'm the 80s fucking slasher librarian Josh LaRue. Whatever I read, whatever you hear, there's one thing I'll promise year after year. You're gonna get the best of my best, this I promise you. Cause I'm back in that fucking bloody slasher groove. Because the librarian is back in the slasher groove. The librarian is back in that slasher groove. That's a promise from Josh LaRue. Slasher books both old and new, written by me and written by you. Yup, now I'm back, I'm back. No more distractions, no more co-host reviews. The librarian is back in that slasher groove. Just narrating slasher books for slashaholics. The librarian is back. I even wrote my own take on Jason and Freddy. Started with quarantine and then I was ready. So I sent Krueger to space in celestial slumber. Then Jason went primal and the rafters had his number. My audiobooks have crossed 75. Now let's hit 100 and have a fucking good time. The librarian is back in the slasher groove. The librarian is back in that slasher groove. Just narrating slasher books for slashaholics. The librarian is back. Even wrote my own take on Jason and Freddy. Started with quarantine and then I was ready. So I sent Krueger to space in celestial slumber. Then Jason went primal and the rafters had his number. My audiobooks have crossed 75. Now let's hit 100 and have a fucking good time. The librarian is back in the slasher groove. Just narrating slasher books for slashaholics. The librarian is back. The librarian is back in the slasher groove. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. No more distractions. My own take on Jason and Freddy. Started with quarantine and then I was ready. So I sent Krueger to space slumber. Then chase him with primal, and the raptors had his number. My audiobooks have crossed 75. Now let's hit 100 and have a fucking good time. The Librarian is back in the slasher groove, just narrating slasher books for slasher both old and new. Written by me and written by you. Yo, I'm back, no more distractions. No more distractions. No more co-host review shows.